Hello everyone. Today you will learn about past forms of be. Past forms of be are was and were. In this lesson, you will learn how to form positive and negative sentences using was and were, how you can form yes no questions and how to answer them, and how you can form WH questions. Remember, WH questions are the questions in which we require some kind of information in response and not just yes or no for an answer. So let's start. Let's start with the formation of positive statements. So the formula is that first of all, we use a subject. As here you can see the subjects I, you, he, she, and it. First is the subject. We start a sentence with a subject and then we use past form of be. Now, as you can see that there are two past forms of be we use depending on the subject. Here, for the singular subjects, if it is I, he, she, or it, we use was. But for you, even if it is referring to a single person, we use were. So the sentence will go like this. I was a student. And then we can use a time marker at the end. Time marker is used at the end. I was a student last summer. You were a student last summer. He was a student last summer. She was a student last summer. It was busy last summer. Now, what we do if the subject is plural? If the subject is plural, like we, you, they, or any other plural subject, for example, my friends, people, or Fatima and I, the be form we use here for past is were. We were in Canada 2 months ago. Again, the time marker is coming in the end. You were in Canada 2 months ago. They were in Canada 2 months ago. Now let's look at some more examples. I is the subject, and then we are using was. Because remember, with I, we use was. I was at the park yesterday. Time marker goes in the end. The weather was beautiful last weekend. They, here we have a plural subject. We are using were. They were excited about the trip. She was my best friend in school. The movie we watched was amazing. We were happy to see you at the party. It was a great experience to travel abroad. The flowers in the garden, it's a plural, so we are using were. The flowers in the garden were colorful. He was a talented musician. The cookies were delicious yesterday. Here we have used time marker and it goes in the end. You don't have to use the time marker all the time, but if you do, it will be at the end of the sentence. Now let's look at how to form negative statements using past of be. We have the subject as in the positive statement, then be, and we add not with it. And the rule that if we will use was or were is the same as the positive statements. As you can see, if the subject is singular, with you we use were and for the rest we are using was. The same as in the positive statement. Only with you, we use were if the subject is singular, and for all the rest, I, he, she, it, or any other singular subject, we use was. And then we add not. I was not at home last week. But when we speak, we don't say I was not. We use the contraction, and the contraction is I wasn't. I wasn't at home last week. You were not at home last week. You weren't. You weren't at home last week. He was not at home last week. He wasn't at home last week. You might have noticed that when I say wasn't, I really didn't say t sound strongly because when we speak, we don't say it. But in informal writing, we do write it. She wasn't at home last week. It wasn't at home last week. So we really stop at n sound. Wasn't, weren't. And now, if the subject is plural, such as we, you, and they, what we do, we, you, and they were not. We use were and add not next to it, and the contraction is weren't. We weren't in town last spring. Again, the time marker goes in the end. You weren't in town last spring. They weren't in town last spring. Let's look at some examples here. I have written some statements, the same positive statements we used in the previous examples, and we are going to turn these sentences into negative sentences. So what are we going to do? I was not. Because remember that the rule that if we are using was or were is the same as the positive statement. The weather was not beautiful. Okay. They were not excited. Let's turn it red so you can see it clearly. She was not my best friend. The movie we watched was not amazing. And how would we say it? Wasn't amazing. We won't say the movie we watched was not amazing. We say the movie we watched wasn't amazing. Then we weren't happy. And how we write it? Not. We were not happy in the formal writing, but in informal writing, we can write we weren't happy. So like this. WEREN apostrophe and then T. Then it was not. It was not a great experience to travel abroad. The flowers in the garden were not colorful. They were not colorful. He was not a talented musician. He was not or he wasn't a talented musician. And then the cookies were not delicious yesterday. I hope this is clear. I would encourage you to write some positive and negative sentences in the comment section. Let's move on to our next section, and that is yes and no question. How we form that. All the other rules are same. Which rules I'm talking about? That which form of be we use for which subject. That is the same. We use time marker in the end. The only thing we do is that we swap the position of subject and be. The form of be comes before the subject. Rather than saying I was, we say was I. So let's look at some examples here. So the first one is was I? Was I? Was I helpful yesterday? Were you helpful yesterday? Was he helpful yesterday? Was she helpful yesterday? Was it helpful yesterday? And it was all with the singular subjects. Now, what we do with the responses? If I say, was I helpful yesterday? You will say, yes, you were. Or you can say, no, you weren't. Were you helpful yesterday? Yes, I was. No, I wasn't. Was he helpful yesterday? Yes, he was. Or no, he wasn't, and so on. Now, what do we do if the subject is plural? We always use were. The same thing, we will use were before the subject. Were we helpful? And then the time marker. Were we helpful last week? Were you helpful last week? Yes, you were. No, you weren't. Yes, we were. No, we weren't. I hope it was clear. Let's practice this. Now here you can see some examples. I have written the positive sentences. Let's turn them into yes or no questions. I'm not going to do all of them. I'll do the few and the rest you can do them and write them in the comment section and we will see that how did you do. So let's turn this one into yes or no questions. Okay. So the sentence is, I was at the park yesterday. So what are we going to do? We are going to bring was first, then I, and that's the only change we are going to do. Was I at the park yesterday? And if you're writing, you must write question mark here. Now, the second one, let's do that together as well. The statement is, the weather was beautiful last weekend. So we will turn it into a question saying, was the weather, sorry, I missed, was the weather beautiful last weekend? No, I shouldn't put period, I should put question mark. They were excited about the trip. Were they excited about the trip? And question mark. Yeah. So this is a question. She was my best friend in school. Was she my best friend in school? The movie we watched was amazing. Was the movie we watched amazing? So first was and then the movie we watched amazing. So for your understanding, let's turn all the questions into red so that you can refer to them easily. And now turn the rest of the statements into questions. You can write them in the comment section and I will try to respond as many as possible. Now, how to make WH questions. As I told you in the beginning, WH questions are the questions where the answers cannot be given in only yes or no. Some kind of information is required. For example, here is a question which says, what was your first job? What was your first job? You can't answer by saying yes or no. You have to give a proper answer. For example, I was a professor at a college. But now let's look at the construction of the sentence. So it's starting with that WH word, which is what, where, when, how, why, and who. So WH questions always start with WH word, even though how is not starting with WH, but we put it in this category because the answer requires some information. For example, if I say, how was it bad? You cannot say yes or no. You have to give the reason. So, first thing is that WH word. Then we use the form of past form of be here, which is was or were, depending on the subject. Then we use the pronoun, the person or the thing we are talking about. What was your first job? Where was the movie theater? When was the last movie over last night? How was the movie? Why was it bad? Who were the actors? Here there are more than one actor, so we are using were. Now look, let's ask each other questions and then answer them as well. What was your first job? I was a professor at a college. Where was the movie theater? In Toronto, Canada. In the response of first question, what was your first job? I would like if you can tell me what was your first job. Please write that in the comment section. Where was the movie theater? In Toronto, Canada. When was the last movie over last night? The last movie was over at 2 a.m. How was the movie? It was pretty okay. Why was it bad? The plot of the story was weak. Who were the actors? I don't know. Maybe they were new actors. Now let's look at some of the examples. Notice one thing. Let's read one first sentence and then notice something. Who was at the party last night? The sentence is starting with who. Then past form of be, and it's ending with a time marker. So this is something you should always remember. You can't say who was last night at the party. No, who was at the party last night. What were you doing at that time? Where were they yesterday evening? When was the concert held? Why was he upset yesterday? How was the movie you watched? Who were your friends in school? Where were the keys last seen? Why were they late for the meeting? How was your holidays last year? In all sentences, you see that the sentences are starting with the WH word, then comes the past form of the be, and if there is any time marker anywhere, it always comes in the end. So we will we will stop this lesson here. I will post some exercises, maybe some stories where I use past of be, past form of be, so that you can learn the use of was and were in different real life contexts. And please let me know how did you find this lesson? Was it helpful, or would you like something else to learn from me? Don't forget to leave your feedback and subscribe the channel if you haven't done so far. And if you like this video, please press the like button, and I will see you again. Bye bye.